说到 storytelling， 很多人知道它的重要性，也非常想要学习说故事的技巧。但问题来了，没有故事可以说，怎么办呢？如果你觉得常常找不到很好的题材，那今天的单元希望带给你一些实用的技巧。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. In this episode, I want to share a technique that is related to storytelling. Throughout November and December, our premium has focused on storytelling. We've talked about a few techniques here on the podcast that are related to storytelling, but there was one specific exercise that we didn't get to cover in premium, and I thought the podcast would be a great place to bring it. And it's about answering that concern where people go, well, I don't have any stories. I know storytelling is important, but I don't know how to find a story. I don't think I have any good stories. But there's an exercise that I will usually run at the top of a storytelling workshop that shows people that everyone has a story. It's just about choosing the right catalyst to spark your imagination or help you remember a great story that you can share.
12月的 Premium 课程，我们就是来分享说故事这种 storytelling 它的一些 application， 也就是实际的运用的地方在哪里。那但是因为刚刚 Nick 有讲到，其实有很多人对于说故事来讲，知道这个重要性，也非常想要学习说故事的技巧。但是有个问题就是我们常常会觉得自己没有题材，没有任何的 inspiration， 因为通常我们觉得说我们在说故事是用在 pitch, presentation 很 professional setting 上面，我们是不是要想一个故事是跟我们工作是一定相关的，所以当我们用这样子思绪去想的时候，有的时候我们就没有办法去想到一些真的有趣的一些故事。所以呢，在今天的这个单元当中，希望带给大家一些小技巧，也就是一些催化剂，能够让大家来开始去想象一下一些非常有趣的故事。
One of the biggest mistakes people make when thinking about a story is they literally do that. They just sit down and they think. But something that we covered continually in Premium and have brought up on the podcast is that good storytelling is not about the overarching biography of your life. This is not your resume made interesting. It's about just finding specific moments and selecting a time that you can zoom in on and tell a story, or to choose specific things that happen in your life and finding a way to weave them together. But the way to find these is not to just statically sit at your desk, stare at a paper or a blank computer screen, and mentally think about what are the best times. Stories are inherently emotional as well as mental. And so how do you trigger emotions? The exercise that I love to put at the top of any storytelling class is about finding something that helps trigger an emotion or a memory, and then figuring out how to tell a story about that. For me, my favorite trigger is actually music. Music is something that when I hear a certain song, and when many people hear a certain song, it takes them back to a moment in their life. So an exercise that I love to give people in a workshop is to select one or two songs, not their favorite song, but a song that the moment you hear it, it immediately connects you to a moment in your life. That moment could be a very specific moment, like the first time you were kissed, what song was playing, or the first school dance you had, what was that song that got you on the floor? It can be like literally a moment in time, or it can represent something that happened in your youth. Like, this is the song of my elementary school childhood. And anytime I hear it, I get taken back to that time.
And I think what I love about that is that it allows us to think about that very specific moment in time. And we don't actually need to just stick with that story, because it actually allows us to start thinking about different things that may have happened in the past, right?
Yeah, it's a great exploratory activity, because once you're back in that, thinking about maybe a certain year, like 2002, something will take you back there. And then you can start to explore around, like, what else happened in that year? What else happened in that moment? And relating it back to professional storytelling, we often forget, like, if we've been working for more than a decade and we've just been grinding for years, we may forget what were the early days like. And so when you find a song or another catalyst that just transports you to that, then you can start to explore, oh, yeah, what did I accomplish? What did I learn? What did make a certain boss a good mentor, or a certain boss a role model that I do not want to emulate? That kind of thing that you may have just packed away into like a secret box of memory.
When Nick talked about it, and I had to really sit down and think about a song that made an impact in my life. And he's right. It's not about your favorite song or favorite lyrics. To me, and Nick knows about this, I don't listen to lyrics. 我完全不听歌词的人，我是听那个旋律的人。所以呢，我就会马上就记得说，诶，有一首歌我非常的印象深刻，因为在那个时候我一直 on repeat 在我的那个 Apple Nano 里面。You remember Nano? It's on repeat all the time. 我就想到 Nelly Furtado 他所唱的 Promiscuous. And I would hear that song on repeat on the way to work from Wall Street to Burberry in New York City, and Burberry back to where I lived in my apartment. 然后我就会想到那种每一天一大早要去上班，然后呢站在那边8个小时 on your feet 8 hours a day， 然后回来这种很累的那种感觉。但是当时的我是非常开心，很累但是非常开心。I started to remember that feeling, and I can explore what really had happened that year, or what happened after that.
Especially in that case, because it was related to your early experiences with work. It's a great way to figure out, like, what formed your work ethic, or what formed the way you approached certain aspects of how you think about getting the job done. And so just using a song like that, it didn't have to be your favorite song. Maybe you wouldn't even list it if someone's like, what are your top 10 favorite songs? It may not come out, but I guarantee if it shows up on Spotify or shows up in a playlist, you'll immediately be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as soon as I hear the, just 1 second of the song, it brings me back to that. So I'm sure you have a lot of these examples, right?
So the two examples that I really like to share when I do this activity, the first one is actually not a song. It is a TV show theme song for the I Love Lucy show, the original black and white version.
台湾的朋友可能不是这么的了解 I Love Lucy. That's too long ago.
1950s. If you ever want classic US TV, go look it up on YouTube. I'm sure you can find clips of that TV show. But when I was in elementary school up until high school, every summer I would go back and I would spend the whole summer with my grandparents, which I think my parents loved because they basically got to be free
vacation.
For like 3 months. My grandparents loved it because we lived in different states, so they got to spend the time with me. But during the summer, Nickelodeon Network would specifically play what they called Nick at Night Block Party. And they would just play all the 1950s TV shows like 4 hours in a row. And I would just sit there watching like the whole thing. And anytime that I hear the I Love Lucy theme song, I can just picture myself laying on the floor, on my stomach, that like on your elbows, just like looking at the thing.
With your feet up?
Yeah, the feet up. And just watching it and dying laughing because of how hilarious that show was. And that, or the I Dream of Jeannie TV theme song. Like, that's immediately where I go. The second song that I always share is the rapper Nelly had a song called Country Grammar, and it came out in 2000. And that was the same year my friends and I all got driver's licenses. And so there was a specific street in my hometown we would drive on because it had a bunch of drive-in diners where you could like park your car and they would bring food to your car. And we would just climb into our sports cars. And if anyone has ever owned a 2-door sports car, you climb in. That's not, you don't just sit in it. You literally, if you're in the back seat, it is a very unpleasant experience. But when you're a high school boy, you're like, yeah, my friend's got a sports car. Let's go get some ladies. 2 of us had sports cars. We would just climb into those cars and we would drive up and down the street and just listen to this over and over again. Pre-social media, all that nonsense. Like, at best, you could text someone and just be like, hey, we're going here. And it cost you a lot of money to do that, so you would be very precious.
You like a beeper?
No, I never had a beeper. That would have been like junior high school. But like senior high school, like every text message you sent was actually quite pricey.
Yes.
And so you would not just LOL, smiley face. No, that cost you money. So this would be like,
you had to be really succinct.
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to send one very specific text message, like what time, where are we going, and what's going on, right? So that music, it just takes me back to that moment. And so back to the main point, these are great catalysts to your example of work or with my examples of when I'm younger to share. It's like, no, we have stories. They're tied to memories. And then once we get into that memory, we can start exploring for songs.
And I like it when Nick also talked about there are several different catalysts. And one of it is that you just look at your desk or in your computer, all the files that you have, right?
Yeah, getting back to, okay, maybe you need a professional story. You can't. No one wants to listen to your childhood stories or trauma. But the idea behind this is the moment you start exploring outside of your head is the easiest way to get into your memories.
Yeah.
So if you want to find that work story, start pulling apart your desk. I bet that you've probably saved some trinket or award or like even a pen that maybe someone gave you that brings you back to a moment in your career. Maybe it was crunch time. Maybe you find like this piece of paper of an overnighter where everyone was working 80-hour weeks to get some project done. And there was like some team formation out of that. But the moment that project was done, you just shoved that memory into the back of a drawer. So finding those, digging through your computer for old files. I know specifically Andrew keeps PowerPoint presentations, every single one that he has ever made across his career. And he'll still pull them up and be like, look at how terrible this is. But then he can talk about like, what did he learn from that experience? What did he learn from doing that? For me, is I literally have a file cabinet that has every teaching material that I ever generated from like 15 years ago. And sometimes there's great ideas in there that I have completely forgot that I ever created. Just digging them up, be like, oh, wow, this was a fantastic exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. 对我来讲，要找像这样子的 inspiration 什么好的内容的时候，我觉得 there's another thing I wanted to add is that I always have this mentality is that the more I think about it, the less likely I will find something really good. So actually, before I even start digging or even start to recalling any kind of memories, I just don't think. I just kind of like have a blank slate in my mind. Just like, all right now I'm just exploring. That's it. That's all I want. So 我反而不会给自己一个 goal. And I want to talk about another catalyst that actually works really well for me is smell. Right? 我觉得其实我们的感官有很多嘛，有些人是看，也是听音乐。那对我来讲是味道。气味其实是一个非常好用的一个催化剂。我觉得很多人其实，如果你今天真的觉得我真的想不出来有什么有趣的东西的话 ，just go outside。然后当然现在可能戴口罩比较困难 ，but like go to any like perfume counter or something。有时候你闻一个东西就想到， My grandmother used to wear something like this. 然后你就会开始想到有很多小时候的故事，或者你闻到一个东西，就是让你想起你妈妈，或让你想起你小时候在某一个 moment。Really,
any of your 5 senses can directly bring back memories. So scent is a great one. We talked about listening, seeing, or even touch. Like certain objects or certain textures relate to something specific that we used to do. So leather often gets connected to maybe work things because your bag or your briefcase or your chair. And the main idea behind this is when you're trying to think of these stories, that first thing is find a catalyst that brings you back to a memory. And then once you're in that memory, it's a great place to start exploring what that memory relates to. Back to your in-workplace storytelling is if you dug through your desk, maybe you have a great memory of early days in your job or a project that you worked really hard on. Now you can start to pick moments or stories related to that. What was it like bringing the team together to crunch time on this project? When you think back to your early days of work, what did you learn from your boss? What made them a great mentor? Or what made them hope that you will never be a boss like them? And these start to create these great stories that people can connect to because you found that thing that triggered a memory. You were able to explore that memory and find those lessons or find those stories that now you can share with other people.And
then I think with the catalyst, once you open up your memory, all your senses, then I think you can start to understand, okay, how do I actually use storytelling techniques? 所以我们在12月的时候，我们就有3堂不同的课程，也讲到了将 storytelling 放在 interview, talking about your future, setting goals, and talking about your past. 所以3种不同的 application 上面。
For any of you who haven't joined Premium yet and want to put your storytelling to work, we actually have a special deal specifically for the next 3 months.
Exactly. 我们接下来呢，在明天我们12月7号就会来公布一个写作补强专班这个会员。那这个会员呢，它其实就是到明年的3月底为止。但是在这3月底之前呢，你可以看到我们这一整年2022年所有的课程，所以今年大概我们已经累积到了20多个小时的课程。那明年呢1、2、3月相继会有3种不同的写作课程。那因为写作课程其实是很多已经是我们的会员的，他希望我们多能够提供一些技巧，所以1月呢我们会来教大家如何写得更清楚 How to write for clarity。 2月呢我们会教大家如何写得更吸引人。第3月呢我们来教大家如何写出情感。所以其实在明年的1、2、3月我们都会在写作这个部分专门的来加强。 So 如果你还没有当我们的会员，那也还在想说来试试看的话，这个 package 只要1200元，你可以看到20多个小时甚至到30个小时的课程。
We hope to see more of you guys enjoying our premium courses. And for those of you who enjoyed today's episode and you have found a catalyst, we hope that you can share more on our social media, either on Facebook under Executive Plus or Instagram under Communication R&D. We want to hear what catalysts bring out your stories and trigger great memories that you can turn into lessons to be shared with everyone. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.